Welcome into episode 190. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. This isn't my normal background. I am in Mobile, Alabama, covering the Senior Bowl with Pewter Report. So we've squeezed time in here. Everyone else is out right now, and it's just me here at 9:52 my time, 10:52 Christian's time, and it's a late night pod for UCF's 2024 schedule release.
Is this the latest podcast we've done that wasn't a post-game pod? It might be.
I think we did when we did this last year when I was in Mobile. I think it was later.
Was it even later?
I think we crossed into like midnight your time.
Don't ever tell us we're not committed to podcasting. Like Bailey's doing a job out in another state and his coworkers are all out partying right now. And Bailey's back in an Airbnb that Bailey told me before we got on he is worried might be haunted.
And I didn't say that.
You pretty much did.
It's a very old house and it creaks when I walk anywhere. And when I walk into the living room, there's a shelf. And when I take a step across from the little dining room area into the room, there's a shelf, and whatever's on that shelf just rattles. So I don't know how this house is still standing at some points, but
what I'm rooting for from this podcast is while you're talking and we're just doing this and recording, we just hear a creak off screen somewhere else in the empty house. I think that would be the funniest thing. It'd be good content. It'd be bad for you, but it'd be good content.
So it's already happened. It wasn't on the podcast, but so I got dropped back off here to record the podcast, and then I was just in the bathroom real quick, and I heard something upstairs. It sounded like a dripping noise. I don't know if the sink is like kind of on, but I didn't enjoy that. So it's not good.
Yeah, being alone at night is just always scary. Maybe I'm making myself sound like a scaredy cat by saying that, but it's generally scary, even when you're in like your own home. I just don't like it.
But
I never have.
It's just I don't think it's. I mean, I've gotten used to it at this point because I live on my own, but I don't know. It's the fact that I'm in another city that I don't know at all, and it's just like
what does that even sort of have to do with it? Like you're still inside a house. You're just like I don't know. Like I don't know what. Like where to go.
The house is haunted. Happens. Yeah, but that's what I was gonna say. If the house is haunted and something's chasing me, and I run out the door, I'm not gonna know where to go.
Are you in like a rural area, or are you in like a neighborhood?
Like a neighborhood.
You're fine then.
I guess.
You actually had one of the. Wait, can I say this on the podcast?
I don't know what you're talking about, so we'll find out.
The scary thing that I love how off the rails we're earlier. The scary thing that happened to you when you lived in the house in Orlando with the person.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was bad.
That's still the scariest thing. Like really, like
I don't know if I want to talk about it. We got to talk about it now that we don't know. We got to talk about it since we've referenced.
We'll cover it in like 30 seconds. And I swear we'll actually talk about football. But it was just funny you mentioned that because of all the people who've like had a creepy thing happen in the house, yours is by far the scariest thing of anyone I know, and it was that guy.
Yeah. So something. Oh man, the quick story. Living in the house with my friends in Orlando back in 2020, 2021. All of a sudden our power goes out, and we didn't know why. And it comes back on. I don't even remember the full story at this point, but all I remember is what it ended with is I was like, something's up here. Something's weird because someone had someone had turned off like the power, like the breaker. And it was like an outside one. Someone had turned it off. And we didn't know why. So I went to sleep eventually. I was pretty scared, but I went to sleep. And I wake up at like 2 a.m. Or maybe like, I don't know, might have been like 30 minutes after I went to sleep. Who knows? And I hear somebody talking, and it's one of my roommates is on the phone with the police because, as it turned out, everybody was about to go to bed. I was one of the first to go to bed. Everybody else was about to go to bed, and they just kind of saw a guy like walking down the sidewalk and kind of like looking into the house through the door. And they were like, and so like the person grabbed somebody else in the house and was like, let's go look, like, let's go figure it out. They go out there and look down like the street, no one there. They look and they see the guy like up against the house, just like for YouTube viewers, this is going to be like a little demonstration. He's like sitting up against the house like this. And they're like,
Bailey like has himself flattened against a wall right now is what he's doing.
They're like, hey, we could call the police if you keep doing this. And he didn't, like, he kind of like, I don't know if he like mumbled something. He didn't really say anything. And then I guess he just left. I don't know where he went. And the police came and they're like, oh, nothing we can really do about it.
But my favorite part about that story was because when you first told me about it, it was like then like a day or two after this happened, you somehow were like alone in the house. Like all the roommates had vanished and you were just like, hope nothing happens to me. And I was like, that's encouraging, like good attitude.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is I don't know, everybody was gone for some reason. And yeah, you and I went to Orlando City game and you were dropping me back off and I was like, yeah, there's just no one here.
And I thought you were gonna die because I was trying to get you. I was like, just come back to my place like for the night. Like, let's not do this. And you're like,
Yeah.
it'll be fine. I remember you walking up to your door from my car, and I'm just like, I wonder if I'm ever gonna see Bailey again. But luckily, I did, and the podcast continued.
Glad
But
we told that story. Now I'm paranoid. But hey, UCF's 2024 schedule came out today,
it
at
did.
Tuesday as we're recording this. And yeah, let's talk about it. I can just run through it real quick and then we'll talk about our takeaways. August 29th, home against New Hampshire to kick off the season, a Thursday night, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. Moved from Saturday to Thursday. September 7th is family weekend against Sam Houston. And then the following weekend, they open up conference play at TCU. Then there's a bye week, and then it's home against Colorado September 28th, and then October 5th is the game that we knew about at Florida. Then come back home on October 12th against Cincinnati. That's the military appreciation game. So Florida and Cincinnati in back-to-back weeks is interesting. It's going to be fun times online in those 2 weeks. October 19th at Iowa State. October 26th home against BYU for homecoming. November 2nd, Arizona is the space game. November 9th at Arizona State. November 16th, which is a second bye week, which I didn't know about
Everyone
until
has two this
yesterday.
year.
Then November 23rd at West Virginia, and November 29th, which is Black Friday. They're back on Black Friday, home against Utah. Such a weird schedule, but it's like
It's odd.
it's kind of electric.
It's much. Well, that's fair to say. I think it's much better than last year's schedule, both from a
Yeah,
favorability to UCF perspective and just from an opponents and cool games perspective. This is probably the best schedule in UCF history. I do have to say, just from a Twitter perspective, doing Colorado, Florida, Cincinnati, and Iowa State in four straight weeks. So obviously Cincinnati and Florida are going back years. Iowa State and UCF have gotten in like a bunch of Twitter dust ups now, including UCF calling out Cyclone Larry like 3 separate times in the schedule reveal video now. And then Colorado, they keep UCF and them keep fighting on Twitter over who's the real black and gold team. So that's going to be
yeah.
a lot for Twitter. That's just going to be a solid month. It's going to feel like going into BYU and Arizona State after that, 3 teams that UCF has no connection to. It's going to feel like such a relief on social media after that stretch.
Yeah, and we talked about the start of the season before and kind of just how boring it is, like New Hampshire and Sam Houston in back-to-back weeks. But then it ramps up. Like you
Picks
go
up in a
at
big way.
TCU, yeah, at TCU, then you have the bye, and then yeah, like you mentioned, Colorado, Florida, Cincinnati, Iowa State, and BYU back for homecoming. It's going to be crazy.
So I will say
Um,
the worst feature of the schedule to me is no bye week before Florida because the SEC did give Florida that week off, and that I I don't know. Different people have different opinions on how much having a bye before a game matters. I fall into the camp that I think it matters significantly, and I genuinely feel worse about that game. What also sucks is so UCF will play Florida, who has a bye week, and UCF does not. While UCF is playing Florida, Cincinnati will be doing nothing because they also have a bye week before playing UCF. So UCF's going to have to play 2 weeks in a row, teams coming off of byes to face them, and it happens to be the 2 teams on the schedule who we hate the most. So that's frustrating, but other than that, it's a pretty solid schedule. It works out pretty well. It's unfortunate that all of the West Coast teams don't really get down to Orlando until like November when the heat isn't going to really be a factor. But as far as bye weeks, that second bye week coming between 2 road trips, you'll have a bye between at Arizona State and at West Virginia. That's awesome. That makes me feel better about both those games. They also have a bye week before their Big 12 home opener. Those could have been placed worse. I think both of those provide pretty solid opportunities for them.
yeah, I think so. I think Iowa State being in October, I don't know what the temperatures are like in October, mid-October.
Well,
It's better
I
than
do
November, I
because
would
I looked
think.
it up. The average high in October in Ames, Iowa is 63, average low of 40. In November, it's high 48, low 28. So getting that game in
Yeah,
October, not November, is going to go from, gosh, it's a little cold. UCF players probably won't like this to we'll just pencil in the L. So I'm good with
yeah,
that being in mid-October.
yeah. And this is bad because I told you this earlier. I was like, I looked at the first 6 games and I'm like, I could see him going 6-0, but they're
Yeah.
not going to go 6-0. But I was like, I could see them going 6-0. It's kind of like that, and it's just weird how that's how much parity there is just in the league. It's like every year you're going to go in and be like, we'll go somewhere between 3-9 and 11-1. I don't know,
Somewhere in that
one of
range.
those. Yeah,
Can I give you a really hot take?
yeah,
I think that worst case scenario, they're going into the Florida game 3-1. Based on what we know right now, both about UCF's roster and TCU and Colorado's rosters. I think that's the worst case scenario. And I think there's a very real chance they're 4-0, which is cool because that'll add some hype to that game. Maybe UCF is ranked because they'll get some sort of boost for beating Deion Sanders on ABC in front of 10 million people, since that's just what happens when Colorado plays football, even though they're not very good. I don't know. But it is funny what you said because I looked at the schedule. My gut instinct was I can see a 6-0 start. Then I look at it and I tweet this. Then I look at it a half hour later and I'm like, I'm seeing 3-3 now through those first 6 games. And it's just that to me is the number one thing that I think is going to be tough for UCF fans to deal with in this new era is I'll say it. I think that I genuinely believe that as of right now and what we know about UCF and other teams, I believe that UCF has assembled a roster that is capable of winning the Big 12 this year. I'm ready to say that. Now, that doesn't mean it's true because you only know so much. We can get there and it turns out, whoops, they missed on their O-line commitments and the O-line sucks. Or whoops, all of the 19 linebackers they brought in are bad. Like there are things that can make this not the case. But as of what we know right now, UCF has a roster that I believe can win the Big 12. Back in the AAC, when we said that about UCF, it was like UCF has a roster that can win the AAC, and maybe one or two other teams also have a roster like that, and then everyone else can't. And it's kind of still like that in the ACC. It's even like that in the Big 10. In the Big 12 right now, there are like 8 teams who genuinely believe and are probably correct that they have a roster to win the Big 12. The Athletic released their too early top 25 today, and they have Utah at number 9, Oklahoma State at number 10, Arizona at number 13, Kansas at number 18, Iowa State at number 24. All those teams right now think they can win the Big 12. There's also Kansas State and West Virginia who did not appear there who also think they can win the Big 12. That's half the league, including UCF. So I think the tough part about the schedule is UCF can do everything right and have the right roster, and the conference is so deep that you're just going to need some luck to go your way too. So I don't know. I look at the schedule and it could be a 10-2 schedule. It could also be 6-6 because 4 plays go differently over the course of the season.
Even at the very basic level, take the winning the Big 12 out of it. You just look at, I think, pretty much every conference game. Yeah, I probably would say every conference game. I could see UCF winning or losing all of them.
Yeah.
Like it's bizarre.
Yeah.
I don't
really,
know.
I mean, it's kind of similar to last year. There's not a single, which I think is just the way this is going to be every year. There's not a single Big 12 game on the schedule where I'm like, I'll pencil that in as a W. I'm not even worried about that one. The closest I feel to that is Colorado, and even that one, I'm still not sure.
The closest I felt to it was Cincinnati, honestly.
I don't know what's going on with Cincinnati. I was, because like you saying that comment, I spent a good chunk of today, I spent a half hour going through their 247 site and reading, trying to get a read on what Cincinnati's supposed to be this year. And as far as I can tell, they don't even know. Their own media and fans don't really have a read either. So I don't know. Cincinnati I don't think Satterfield's a very good coach, so maybe they'll be bad again. That would be splendid. Or they might be good. I don't know. No idea.
I really don't. What else can we get through? I mean, I think did they announce the space game with the schedule last year? Because I don't remember. I don't think they did.
No, because I remember us arguing about it for a little bit.
We were talking about it on the podcast. So for them to announce that early, I was kind of surprised.
Well, last year was also because there wasn't a clear game where it made sense, because they always try to have it around like end of October, early November, whatever that home game is, and there just wasn't a home game where that made sense for it this year, and they ended up having to have it later in the season than they typically like. So I figured when we saw the schedule it'd be BYU or Arizona, and it is Arizona. They are testing the space game magic, buddy. Do you think it's like they're emboldened by what happened with Oklahoma State, and now they're just like, there's power to this game and we should use it? Because Arizona, if you don't know, if you're not a big college football fan, you're more of a UCF fan, they went 10-3 last year. They did lose their coach. They lost Jed Fish, who was a very good coach, but they hired San Jose State's head coach, and that was generally considered a good hire. And what's very unusual for the portal era is they didn't lose their best player. They lost a lot of good players, but they didn't lose Noah Fafita, who's their quarterback, who's very good. Their second best player, who I believe is a running back, they also didn't lose. They finished number 11 last year. That's like, Arizona thinks they can win the Big 12 this year. And UCF could have just put the space game 1 week earlier against BYU. That's probably a lot more palatable of a game, but they're bought in on the hype, and I kind of respect it.
Yeah, I mean, I thought last year, I thought for sure it was over. Like I thought the
100%.
streak was over, and I did not at all see that coming. What we saw against Oklahoma State. So yeah, they're testing it. It's a heat check, and we'll see. I mean,
it's a literal, but it is. It's a literal heat check. Like I can tell that they're just like, let's see. Like it seems like they can't lose these games. Let's try it.
Yeah, I also have to say, for anyone watching the video version of the podcast, you were watching me essentially have an allergy attack in real time. Like I don't know,
oh, no.
Since we got like 5 minutes into this podcast, my nose has started to itch and my eyes have started to water. So you're getting a treat if you're on the video version. But
is that a treat?
No, it's not. It's awful.
Well, let me read you a space game thing really quickly, because
it.
This was on Twitter and I found it enjoyable. Jason Shear, I think that's how you pronounce his name, is the publisher of Wildcat Authority. That's the 247 site for Arizona. If you're on Twitter, you've probably seen him a lot because he really has planted himself in the Big 12 media space, especially when the realignment stuff was going on. He was always very pro Arizona to the Big 12 and would get in fights with the Pac-12 media. So you've probably seen him a lot. He tweeted earlier today, "It appears Arizona is the space game for UCF. I have no idea what that means, but UCF fans are very excited." So I am even more excited because one thing I thought about is
found out.
he's gonna find out. And I gotta say, I love an Oklahoma State fan just replied thoughts and prayers to that tweet. It was cool to see all the Big 12 teams sort of learn because the space game last year, partially because of the opponent and partially because of them being in the Power Five, it was definitely the most national attention the space game has gotten, just because it was now a Power
Yeah.
Five team, has tradition, big opponent, they got a big win, the uniforms were awesome. And now that we get to do this again, and now it's the four Pac-12 schools being like, what the hell is this space game thing? And like they're gonna find out. And I can't wait for that. I really can't wait.
The other thing I thought was cool about today was UCF put out their schedule release video, and they did, of course, did a good job with the content team always does really well. There were like other Big 12 fans watching it, and I think it was a lot of it was Cyclone Larry thing, which if you're not on Twitter, I don't even know how to explain it to you.
Means nothing if you're not on
Um,
Twitter, and I don't know how to explain it
yeah,
either, so I'm sorry.
but people were like, "Oh man, we have to like UCF now. Like UCF may be all right." Like I think they just like really started to respect UCF. Just I don't know, being in tune with memes or something. It was
So
just like
being in tune with memes.
that's what it was. It was like oh wow, like UCF is like that. Like everyone was like complimenting the video, and of course, I mean the content team did a good job, but that was kind of funny to see.
Well, I was gonna save this for tweet of the week, but I'll say it now. A thought I had today was really I feel like UCF fans take for granted how insane the content team here is, just with everything, with every little day-to-day thing, because it's so strong all the time, both from keeping UCF relevant to just having fun memes and turning things into events, and also just giving UCF fans amazing graphics in the most mundane tweets. Like I was looking around today as all the Big 12 teams, all 16 of them, which is sort of crazy, were revealing their schedules, and so many of them, like most of them, their accounts were our Big 12 schedule is here, exclamation point, and then just a chart with their schedule. And that's just so foreign to me because of the effort UCF's content team puts into all this stuff. And I really feel like we take it for granted. And you saw it happening today too, because like you said, a lot of other Big 12 fan bases, especially the Pac-12 teams, were like, hey, this UCF is like cool. That's interesting. Didn't know that.
What was great about it was they had the video, which was great. It was like 3.5 minutes long, almost 4 minutes, I think.
Great
And then
video.
there was also just the graphic. It was at the end of the video, but they also put the graphic itself, and it was like UCF's literal opponents, and it's like just the funniest images of these different opponents, like literally what they are, and like it was just they're so good at it. It's kind of crazy.
It's ridiculous. They need to be. So this is bad podcasting because you went to take a sneeze and my reaction was to pause for your sneeze instead of keep talking, which I think is the worst possible thing that I could have done there, but it's fine.
I think that's the first time I've ever sneezed on this podcast. It's going great.
It's the ghost man.
Yeah, no, they heard me questioning the age of the house, and they're like, "We'll show you."
So how do you feel about Utah on Black Friday? Is that the
Not
biggest
good.
surprise of the schedule? That's wild to me for a lot of reasons.
Yes, just because.
Okay.
No, and I was just trying to think like the shift back to Black Friday is cool, and it's
Yeah, I
like
agree.
okay, well,
Feels
you would
right.
think like it's going to be, and I guess it is a big matchup, but it wasn't the matchup I would expect them to put on Black Friday.
No, especially
And
because this isn't some wide-ranging thing. There's only one other Big 12 game on Black Friday. It's not like they're trying to take over that slate or
what
something.
is it?
It's a really good question that I should have the answer to, but I've
Oh
already forgotten what it was.
no,
I'm sorry.
I haven't. Literally, UCF schedule is the only Big 12 schedule I've seen because I've just been busy all day. But yeah, UCF Utah is a weird enough matchup as it is, and for it to be on Black Friday at the Bounce House, it's just I don't know. And if both teams have the seasons they probably think they're going to have, it might have like really high stakes. That
I
seems
think part of the
scary.
reason it's going to work is because I don't think there are two programs with a bigger god complex in this league than UCF and Utah. So I feel like that's going to make the game fun. But hold on. I want to see which other team has the Friday game, which it is Colorado, Oklahoma State is the other Black Friday game,
Ooh, okay.
which is also an interesting one. But I do agree is Utah, and which, like I said, Utah on the Athletics way too early poll is number 9. They return Cam Rising, who's been here for 12 years and are expecting to be very good. Their fans are and administration, everyone are all in on we are coming into the Big 12 to win the league in year one, and it's not even going to be difficult. That's where their head is at. And UCF obviously has similar aspirations, and whether UCF fully meets those aspirations or not, this conference is so even. It wouldn't surprise me if you're going to see a team that's like 7-2 in conference is going to be playing for the Big 12 title. And I feel like there is a high chance that that game has serious implications for at least one of the teams involved, possibly both. And that makes it really scary, but also kind of cool.
Utah coming in and thinking they're going to win the conference championship is like kind of crazy, but I also kind of believe them.
Yeah, and I hope they don't because their fans seem mean. But I honestly kind of do think so. I think they are definitely, which is sort of funny. This is funny how much brands can change, and it's why I'm excited for UCF's future too. Because let's not forget that Utah was a Group of Five team. What 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and they were a Group of Five power, similar to what UCF was in the AAC. Similar levels of success. And they went from Group of Five team being added in the last round of realignment to a Power Five conference to of the four teams joining the joining the Big 12 from the Pac 12, Utah was the big brand get. It was like, oh, Utah's coming in. The team that's gone to the Rose Bowl 2 out of the last 3 years, the team that wins the Pac 12 all the time is really good. And it shows that the Group of Five teams that have had success can build up. But yeah, I mean, they're probably, what are they? If we're going to rank brands in the new Big 12, are they like top four?
Yeah.
I don't know how to pull apart Colorado from Dion because Colorado was a nothing team
It's
without
not
him
a
as
it's
far
not a
as
big
brand.
brand.
So I
Yeah.
don't, yeah, I mean, I would put like Oklahoma State feels like number one to me.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking football, so yes, I
Yeah,
think
football. Football's what I'm talking
so.
about.
I think so.
God,
Which
doing
almost
a
even feels
brand
weird.
ranking podcast, like let's just rank the brands of the Big 12. I feel like that would be extraordinarily difficult because I think a lot of these
No,
teams are
I don't think I could.
super
I don't
close.
think I could do it. I think it would. I think it would be like T1 and then just everybody tied for first. I don't
Tied for
know.
first, Oklahoma State, TCU, Utah. I feel like a year ago I would have put Baylor in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kansas State. I don't know. It's hard. I don't want to do this. Never mind. West Virginia should
Yep.
be in there if they were better. This no. I don't want to do this. This is hard. Let's just not.
I just. I'm starting like it's what you tweeted. It's the thing about like you can look at it and be 6-0, 3-3 through the first 6 games. I'm looking at this and I'm like, I could see them losing so many of these games, or I could see
Yeah.
them winning so many of these games. Like I look at TCU and Colorado. I'm like, they could lose both of those and be 0-2 in conference going into Florida. And I don't know. It's just that Florida game being where it is too is just
So weird.
would it be wouldn't it be it would be better, right? If it was the beginning of the season, if it was number like the second game or third game, you would think, or is it good because UCF will have played 4 games by then and will kind of have everything you would think ramped up to where they want it to be.
I would not want them to go. I don't know. Doing New Hampshire, then Sam Houston, then Florida seems crazy. Like I wouldn't want that.
Or
My
like
hope.
New Hampshire and then Florida and then Sam Houston. Like you don't
Yeah.
want to do that.
So here's my not selfish. My way of looking at it is Florida's slate before the UCF game is Miami, Samford, Texas A&M, and at Mississippi State. They could be 1-3 going into the UCF game. And if that's why I don't mind where it is in the schedule, because if Florida's at the point where the lot like everyone knows that Napier's a dead man walking and the locker room's starting to come apart, that's a big and if UCF is surging and is coming in 4-0 or 3-1, that's advantageous. So I don't hate where it is because Napier's Florida football career may already be coming to a close by the time that game rolls around. So that's why I'm okay with
Yeah.
it.
If they're 1-3, so who'd you say those opponents again if you have them still?
Miami,
Okay.
Samford,
Okay.
Texas A&M,
Okay.
at Mississippi State.
Okay. Yeah, I think most likely out of that they're probably 2-2.
Probably 2-2.
But if they're 1-3 and they lose to UCF, he's fired
He's
after that
done.
game.
He's done after
Yeah.
that game. And I think that UCF going 3 straight seasons getting a coach fired would be really special. Well,
Wait,
maybe it's mean, but it'd be special.
what does mean? But it's also special. 3 straight seasons. Wait, why am I blanking on who they got fired?
Wait, now I'm blinking and I said it. Did I get the stat wrong? They got what do you call it? I know who it was for 2022. There was someone for 2023, was there not? Or did I
Was it
make that up?
Holgerson? It was
Yes,
Holgerson,
yes.
right?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was Jeff Collins at
Holgerson.
Georgia Tech in 2022, and it
Jeff
was Dana
Collins.
Holgerson.
Okay.
That's funny. We each had one, but because I said that because I know the stats right, but I was totally blanking on who it was in 2023. Yeah, they got Jeff Collins fired after the Georgia Tech game in 2022. They got Dana Holgerson fired after the Houston game in 2023, and now they'll get Billy Napier fired after the Florida game in 2024. Do you know how messed up my brain is? You said Holgerson, and I was like, but they lost to West Virginia. Like I just totally blanked for a second and went back to like
Yeah.
6 years ago when he was West Virginia's coach. But yeah, so that's why I'm okay with where it's at. I do just I don't know. I feel like we can talk about the schedule all night long and we can talk about the Big 12 slate. And I still feel like whether UCF wins the Big 12 or plays for the Big 12 title or doesn't come close, so much of how people view Malzahn and the season as a whole is going to be what happens in that Florida game. I think, and this is dumb, but I think there is a reality where UCF plays for the Big 12 title, but if they didn't beat Florida, there's still people who are just going to be really upset about the season no matter what.
I don't think there'll be a lot of people though. I have a hard time seeing that. As crazy as UCF fans are, if they're playing for the Big 12 title in year 2, and yeah, they lost to Florida, like I don't know. I'd have a
I
hard
don't know,
time
man. Now,
seeing people.
remember, I said playing for, not win, because
Yeah,
I mean, I just feel like if that happens, like say UCF goes, say they go 9-3, they drop Florida, they drop Utah, and they drop at Iowa State, and they make the Big 12 title game at 7-2. Maybe they rematch with Utah, and they lose, and they also lost Florida, so now they're 9-4. Twitter's just going to be like, what a season of missed opportunities. Like they were so close to beating Florida or beating Utah to go to the playoff, and they didn't do it. Like that'll be the narrative.
yeah, I think so, but
Which would be
I don't
ridiculous
know.
because playing for the Big 12 title in year two would genuinely be the most rapid ascent of any college football program in the history of the sport to go from group of five team to playing for a power five or power four, whatever we're calling it now, conference title in year two. No one's ever done that. So that would be a success no matter what happens in the game. But I also know how this fan base is. So it would not feel that way if they lost to Florida and then they lose that game.
It would be toxic. And I just thought of the most toxic scenario possible is losing to Colorado and Florida and back to back, or not Colorado and Florida, Florida and
Or in
Cincinnati in back to
Cincinnati.
back weeks
Oh, I
is,
hadn't thought about that.
I
Oh,
don't
that
think it
would
would
be
happen.
bad.
I don't think it would happen. But if it did, there would be a lot of people that are like, all right, get out of here, Gus. It's time to
I would
go.
have to delete Twitter.
Probably.
I'd be done. I can't
Yeah.
even imagine that. But you said the whole Gus get out of here. I'm in that camp now of not like Gus get out of here, but and we'll talk about this more next week. We're gonna get into. I wrote a column this past week, and a lot of you didn't like it, which whatever. I didn't even really like take a side. I just listed what my next season might.
Yeah, that's the funny part is like you didn't take a side. It presented the whole thing like why this could be good, why this could be bad. You texted me, you're like, hey, I want you to read this before I post it. I texted or I read it. I was like, it looks good. People aren't gonna like it. And then people didn't like it. And like I don't think you were necessarily surprised, but part of me feels like you were like the Pokemon meme where he was like where Pikachu was like because I told you it was like people aren't gonna like this, and you're like, and I said you're gonna get a lot of people angry at you and arguments on Twitter, and I was like, well, that's not anything that you aren't prepared for and can't handle
I
and
was the
welcoming.
Pikachu meme because I knew I was going to get in arguments on Twitter over the article. I didn't think the arguments were going to be with the guy who runs the kingdom. So like that was where the Pikachu meme thing came in. But anyway, all that being, I'm not talking about, we're not doing that on this podcast. We'll get in that a little
Okay.
bit next week. But yeah, anyway, I wrote that column and people were upset that I've suggested that, there are concerns about next year that are worth discussing because as I've said on this podcast a million times, we don't exist to be cheerleaders. Not every decision UCS makes is automatically the right decision. We'll talk about where we are skeptical of things. But anyway, all that being
Yeah,
said,
I have some
we're,
things to say next week.
next week's going to be a really interesting podcast because I have a lot to say too, and I worry how it's going to go. But I also feel like where I stand is totally fair, and I also feel like I'm never ever, and because now we are going to get into a little bit. I've been worried about how this offseason is going to go because I think it's a very scary spot to be in when the entire fan base is all in on UCF is going to be 11-1 next season, and a lot of media who cover the team are very in on like UCF is going to be 11-1 next season, and I don't feel the same way, and I worry about being the podcast that does that all off season. Like I'm afraid of the concept of people are going to not want to listen because we're being more critical, and I really just think it's more critical thinking than actually being critical. But also the whole point of the podcast, as we've said a million times, we're not cheerleaders. We're not going to ever censor what we say or act like we're more excited for something we're not. So we're going to do it. We'll see what happens. But all of this was to say, as far as Gus Malzahn in this season, when you said people will be out on him, I'm a little more in that boat now just because he set it up that way. They have
No, yeah.
both publicly and privately basically put all their chips on the table and said, this is the year. So if it's not that, since Gus Malzahn has gone all in on this is the year, I think that whatever criticisms you're ready to hurl at him will be completely fair because he set up the season that way. They were on a trajectory similar to what Utah and TCU and past teams have been on when they made a leap. They took themselves off of the trajectory and said, we are going to try to fast track this and try to be better faster. That comes with risks. If it doesn't work out, criticism is fair at that point. Gus Malzahn, I mean, I don't know if they get into year four and they have a bad year this coming year, especially since they went all in. That's tough. That's tough. And it's going to be a lot to talk about.
Here's how my brain works. You said it comes with a lot of risks, and I just thought of Dylan.
It comes with
I just
exactly
thought,
one
I
risk,
thought of
and
Dylan
his
risk.
name is Dylan. I was thinking a little
Um,
bit ahead because now we have the spring dates for spring ball about
yeah.
stuff to talk about, and I'm fascinated with who QB2 is going to be. That's not a discussion to have right now. We're talking about the schedule, but I've been thinking more about that. And I have no idea. I feel like it's going to be risk, but maybe it's not. I don't know. New offense coordinator, who knows?
I don't want to get into the staff changes, but I have things to
We're
say.
not. We're doing
You
another.
said new
That'll be next
offensive
week.
coordinators. It's Gus calling the plays again.
Which underrated part of, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I said the whole kingdom thing, I wrote this column about how UCF has made a ton of changes and they blew up the coaching staff, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing. And I listed reasons it could work out, and I listed the reasons that it could not work out. And I said, which is the honest truth, I'm still not sure where I fall on it. What I think next week's podcast will be interesting is that there's moves they've made I feel really good about. There are moves they've made I'm very skeptical of. I'm not all in one way or the other. But anyway, the SJ2E who runs the Kingdom got involved because I said in my tweet that they blew up the coaching staff, and he replied and said, no, they didn't. X amount of coaches have been here for 4 years or whatever. And I just replied and said, they demoted the offense coordinator and hired a new offense coordinator. They demoted the defense coordinator, hired a new defense coordinator. They fired the linebackers coach. They fired the strength coach. They fired the wide receivers coach. They brought a new cornerbacks coach like that. I don't know how else you refer to that. But anyway, he replied and said, and this was very interesting, he said something along the lines of, well, it's going to be the same OC and play caller as it was by the end of last season, which is, so Gus was calling plays last season. Is what SJ2 just confirmed on Twitter.
By the end of last season, yeah.
Which isn't a surprise to a lot of you, so you're right. Gus Malzahn is calling plays again, but well, like I said, there's just too much to get into to do half a podcast on that, so we'll get into a lot more.
Okay. Yeah, we will. I'll save it. It's fine. What else from the schedule do you want to get? Like what? I'm trying to see like what the worst, not worst, but like most difficult stretch is. I think it's good. It's good. The second bye week comes at a good time because they have it after the trip all the way to Arizona State.
I was going to say, I think November is the bad part of the schedule because you host your month in November is Arizona, who's trying to win the Big 12. Then at Arizona State, who's not good. And actually, I'm going to say that's the game I probably feel the best about because Arizona State's been pretty chronically bad. But it's still a long road trip. Then you're at West Virginia, who's also trying to win the Big 12, and they're a very tough place to play. And then it's Utah, who's also trying to win the Big 12. It's just a really not fun time. And what sucks about it even more is it feels like this schedule is potentially set up for where UCF's going into November like 7-1 or something, and we're feeling like they did it, and then they just crumble because of how backloaded it is. It's like the opposite of this season, where instead of ending on a high note, you just lose all your final games.
I could easily see them going 1-3 in November.
Yeah.
And if that happens,
I don't like that, but I can see it.
We're ending the season on a 1-3 stretch, and the calls for Gus's job are going to get as loud as probably they've ever been. Even though 8-4, good. Like 8-4 in year 2, solid. But if it's like you said, if it's 7-1, which I don't know if it's gonna be 7-1 going to November, but if it's 7-1, things are gonna feel really, really good around here until, well, not in Mobile, Alabama, but around UCF. And if it's 7-1, things will feel good. And then if they go 1-3 with those games, it's going to be toxic because it'll be 8-4, it'll be cool, but it'll be you fell apart down the stretch, you're a bad coach, leave.
And so
which a lot
much
of people
want
to say anyway, but
and so much of it is the order it happens in, right? Because you're right, it'll just be that way. It's like we talked about how the difference between winning a bowl game and losing a bowl game is so dramatic, even though it means nothing, just because it's that last note you're left with. Like, and I think what you said is true because a natural trajectory, like if you told me before the 2023 season, you said it's going to the Big 12, they're going to go 6-6 in year 1, they're going to go 8-4 in year 2. I'd be like, that tracks. That's good. They're improving. Yep. But you can't publicly hold a press conference where you call 6-7 a total failure and why you're replacing both coordinators and then improve by 2 wins. They've just raised the bar so high for themselves. It's like, I think anything worse than 9-3 on the schedule and next season is probably a failure. But the other thing about Gus Malzahn, I want to clarify because you said people be calling for it. The way his contract is structured and the way his buyout is set up, UCF still can't fire him next year. Like they don't have the money to do so. Maybe you can bully him out of the job. Like maybe he'll just decide to retire. But that it would have to be Gus. To be clear, Gus would have to decide, yeah, this isn't working, I'm out. Versus,
what's interesting is what you just said about the way it happens. Like if they would go 8-4 and that's the way it happens. To me, a lot of it was like how I felt this past season, where it was like I wanted them to get to 6-6 because I wanted them to get to a bowl game, be the best of the new 4. Get to a bowl game, 6 wins in your first year in the Big 12, cool. But the way they got there just was the most annoying possible route, I think.
Yeah, because they didn't win for 6 weeks. They took a giant break from winning.
And then they ended on a better note. So it was like hard to be like, okay, but if you look at the whole season, it's like I wasn't happy for a large stretch of the season. So it's like, yes, they did what I asked them to do, but how they got there was stupid and annoying. Be the same thing this year, be like 8-4, but they went 1-3 down the stretch when they had a chance to be like in the mix for the title game. And it's like it's one of those things where it's like you go 1-3 in that stretch, and it's like it's gonna be hard to blame them because like those are good teams.
Yeah. Of what we know now, it'll turn out that because it's also little things we're doing like at TCU. I'm just looking at that as It'll be challenging, but they'll win it because TCU was 5-7 last year. TCU played for the national championship the year before that. Like, you just never, and they have a
Yeah.
good coach in Slade X. You just don't know. There will be some team on here that is supposed to suck and it'll be awesome. There will be some team on here that's supposed to be awesome and it'll end up being like an easier game. Maybe turns out the Pac-12 was weak as hell and Utah can't field a team. Who knows? That was an extreme example, but
Yeah.
something along those lines. But it is funny because I'm thinking of the reverse of it. Like, how would a season be viewed if, say, UCF starts really poorly? They go 8-4, but say it's because they lost at TCU, they lost to Colorado, they lost at Florida, and they lost to Iowa State. But then they won their final five, one out from there. Like, are the fans still out on that season, or is it wow they had so much success down the stretch that we're feeling good about next season? Blah blah blah.
I don't know because it's not a perfect comparison, but the Bucks just did that. The Bucks were
Yeah,
they were 4-7 at the end of November, and everyone was like, get him out of here," because they don't like the coach. And then they win 5 of 6, make the playoffs, win a playoff game, play the second playoff game close. And I don't know. At this point, people are back off because the whole staff's been blown up by someone leaving. But I don't know. I don't know
I think
because
part of what hurts it is how the guys
college
who
is
won't be
different.
back. I mean, KJ
Yeah,
Jefferson, Kobe Hudson, RJ Harvey on offense, on defense, Ricky Barber. Like, there's,
yeah.
Lee Hunter. Is Lee Hunter have 2 years left or 1 year left?
I
It's time to
don't
start
ask me
thinking about
that.
that stuff. I don't really know. We're
Yeah,
gonna have to get that ready for spring ball, but yeah, I feel like that's where the pitch kind of falls apart, right? Because UCF's been so open about we landed all these 1 year guys to sort of
yeah.
either bringing guys back or getting guys in the portal to put together. Which that's another reason that I'm a little skeptical of the strategy everyone else loved is that there's it feels like they're all in on 2024 to a fault, to the point that I'm like, you guys know you still have to play in 2025 too, right? Like, you have to still be planning for another season past this. It's like the apocalypse isn't coming, but I don't know. It's interesting. I
The
just worry because it's the Big 12 is so damn tough and so much freaking parity. I mean, that schedule came out and every national media tweet from Ross Dellinger to Andy Staples was just like, God, that league it's like the most NFL league in college football because they're all so freaking similar. And that just means that there's going to be headaches for UCF this year. There's no reality where they come out and go 12-0 because I'm just not sure it's possible in this league for anybody.
I just had a thought, which actually I'm gonna have to like think about more because it's interesting to me. Is if yeah, they're building for 2024 to be such a big year, like you said, to a fault where a lot of these guys aren't coming back next year. But maybe they're thinking this is our year to maximize it, and by 2025, like the recruiting classes that have been so good that we've been building up, a lot of those guys we started to get ready to play. So maybe yeah, we won't be as good in 2025 as theoretically we were in 2024 because we went all in, but we'd still be good enough to be to kind of keep looking like we're building this thing because we have younger guys playing and there are recruits and it's starting to get into the cycle of we have all these amazing incredible recruits coming in. I don't know. I don't know if that's how they're thinking about it. Probably not because I don't know. Well, I guess they probably do think that far in advance, but
No, they do. And
that's
to
just
be
a
clear, the dream
possibility.
scenario for UCF, and it's why I'm still hopeful for this era and for Gus Malzahn and everything, is the recruiting class they just put together for 2024 was the best class in program history. It was one of the best classes in the country. It outpaced the entire Big 12 except for literally Texas Tech. It was just light years ahead of everybody else. If they recruit like that, if they do a clone of the 2024 class every year, if that wasn't just whoa, everything broke their way and they won every battle and the kingdom was on point with their NIL and more just that's what they're going to recruit from now on, they will eventually in 3 or 4 years just be better than most of those teams because the other
Yeah.
teams in the Big 12 don't recruit. They would go from this league is full of parity to UCF is better than everybody. I know that sounds nuts to say, but that is genuinely what would happen if they continue to recruit this clip. So if the 2025 class is similar to the 2024 class, then I'm excited. But
Let's
and
just do
yeah,
that.
let's just do that. Yeah, I wonder if UCF has thought of that, of just recruiting all of the really good players. They should try that.
They probably should. I think they probably should do that.
I want to say an interesting thing about recruiting while we're on that topic, because the Athletic
Okay.
wrote a story. It was a which I this was a month ago at this point. I posted part of it. It was they interviewed a bunch of like 20 high level recruits from this class anonymously about why they chose where they chose, all of that. And UCF came up because recruits were asked what were some of the craziest visits, and someone called out UCF, which is wild. Which Matt Rochelle, the Orlando Sentinel, just wrote a story because UCF's fiscal year numbers came out for previous fiscal year. So this is 2022 season, all that. But UCF's recruiting expenses doubled from the 2022 fiscal year to 2023. And
It's the helicopters and cars.
the helicopters, not for the basketball team though. Enjoy your Delta flights. But anyway, and the
Don't get
what
me
I found
started.
interesting about the article was the recruiting article the Athletic wrote was that of the I think it was 15 recruits they were asked if they chose the school that offered them the most NIL money, and of the 15, only one said yes. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Now, some of the numbers were crazy. Like one of the players said, "No, I ended up settling for a school that offered me 400,000,
Yeah.
which is a lot of money more than UCF's offering." But I feel like we got a little too NIL is incredibly important. There's no doubt about it. But I think we've moved to an era where it's more important for retention than high school recruiting. And I think we maybe jumped the gun a little bit on getting a little too woe is me on what UCF can do in high school recruiting because of NIL limitations. I think they can get good players. Now, maybe those players leave after year two when they've been really good and UCF can't afford to pay them, but hey, at least you had him for a couple of years.
Yeah, no, and I guess that would be one of those things where it's like almost the same thing where back when they had Frost, where it was like, yeah, it sucks that they lost their coach, but at least like they had a coach that was good enough to get like to be this attractive to another school. Like it's like if they do have recruits like that that end up leaving because other schools are offering them more money, that means like they came in and produced as freshmen and sophomores, which like doesn't happen a lot of places. So
No.
it would be one of those situations.
And they've been
But
doing, I mean, you look at last year's class and the fact that they had three guys already playing a ton and playing key roles in John Walker, Braden Marshall, and the other one, Randy Pittman, lost his name for a second there.
yeah,
Apologies. I mean that implies they're recruiting well, and there are
yeah,
guys in the pipeline like Isaiah Nixon and Andrew Harris. We'll hopefully be seeing this year. You hope this class, maybe we'll be seeing Kylan Fox, maybe Riddell Richardson. They're recruiting really well, and that's exciting just for the future of this league. And it's such a freaking weird league. Like I'm just looking at the schedule, and it's how do you even explain the November slate to a fan from 5 years ago or even 4 years ago? It's like, yeah, they're going to play BYU, then Arizona State, then West Virginia, then Utah. How would you explain that to like a 2016 or 2017 UCF fan?
someone else. So you said something about that earlier about how UCF schedule being like including BYU and like I don't know if it was Arizona or Arizona State, and someone was like, I would have thought we got into the Pac-12
Yeah.
because like you could see the Pac-12 adding BYU because they're out west and all that, and it's somehow UCF getting in the mix too. But like now the Pac-12 doesn't exist. The Big 12 is just this very weird, very fun conference where three of your four November games are against Arizona schools and Utah.
You just look at it
Bizarre.
as UCF's 2024 schedule. Homecoming is against BYU, the space game is against Arizona, and the Black Friday game is Utah. That's just weird to think about it in those terms.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question on this.
Okay.
Let's say, well, let's not say anything. Just you tell me, because someone asked me about this earlier, and I was curious because I was trying to think about it. Say that UCF is fortunate enough to play in a game day game this year. What game will it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, without looking at other games on these like weekends,
Just gut fit. We're not getting that scientific with it.
couldn't you see game day going to Florida?
Maybe. I don't know anything
UCF and
about
Florida.
that
Yeah, I don't know.
slate.
I don't know what October 5th is, but UCF at Florida feels like I don't know if it feels like a game day game because like it's never happened before, but like it feels interesting enough to be like, oh, UCF, a Big 12 member, is going to an SEC program in October.
If
Are
they'd
you pulling
both
up the
gotten
schedule that
off,
day?
I can't. It's not like posted yet on ESPN
Oh, that's
the
true. You're
breakdown
right.
that way.
Yeah. Oh,
I if they both got off to strong starts, say UCF's undefeated and Florida's maybe lost one, and there's nothing else shaking that weekend, I could see it. I could totally see it.
so much of it just depends on the weekends because you could see the Arizona game for the space game also being a game. That'd be so much fun if game day was the space game. But like, I think those are my two answers: Florida and Arizona.
You know, it's
That's
so
crazy.
funny too. I'm looking at the Georgia Auburn's on October 5th, but that might not have a lot of juice just because,
Auburn's Auburn.
looking for the SEC, Texas, Oklahoma's on
Um,
a bye. Yeah, and honestly, I think my favorite part about that would be, do you know how freaking pissed off Florida fans would be if they got a game day game and it's because they're hosting UCF? Like they wouldn't know how to feel about it. They'd be excited, but also just livid that that's the
when's the
game
last
that
time they
got it.
hosted game day? I mean, you'd have to
Hasn't
look
been
that up. But
anytime
like,
recent.
yeah, it hasn't. I can't recall anytime recently. That's crazy. The
I
other thing
think
I was going
has
to say about the
UCF hosted it
schedule,
more recently than them?
I wouldn't be
No
surprised.
way. They have to have done it since then, right?
But when? Like,
They were good in 2020. Did they host maybe in
yeah, but
2020
it
or
was
something?
COVID, so like, I don't know. I don't even remember what they did for game day in 2020.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, either
Like,
way,
I don't
point
recall.
stands. It would be very. I agree with you, and I don't know, but like Arizona could maybe be another one just because depending on what's going on that weekend, and if both teams' seasons have worked out the way they were anticipating, then yeah, that could be a game
Yeah,
where not only is it this guy, like, I want game day for a space game, man. I that would be so cool, like indescribably cool.
like imagine that being a game day game, space game, and a top 25 match. Like if UCF's number 20. and Arizona's number 11.
Now that
Let's
we've
do it.
said this, that game's gonna roll around. UCF and Arizona are both having horribly disappointed seasons.
Yeah.
Everyone hates the space uniforms. The stadium's half empty. Like it's just gonna be like the worst game of the season now that we've hyped
Yeah,
it up like that.
you all hated the space uniforms last year until they beat number 15 Oklahoma State 45-3.
I will
Was it
never.
45-3?
It
That
was
I just said that
45 to
score.
3. Yeah.
Oklahoma State did not score a touchdown. That's insane. The last thing I
UCF's
was going to
played
say,
7 space games and they've won
yes.
3 of them by 40 points or more.
What was the average margin?
28.8.
Okay, never mind. I'm not even going to ask you that question.
What's the question?
Like, can they match it? But I don't
Can
think
they
can beat
match
Arizona.
it?
Can they match it? Can they match
Yes,
28?
I believe they can because I didn't believe they could beat Big 12 runner-up Oklahoma State 45 to 3, and then they freaking did. So sure, yes, I think they could. I think they could. They beat
And
Temple
then,
by 57 the year before that. Like, why not?
yeah. I was going to say the last thing I wanted to say about the schedule is I think we've referenced it on the podcast before because the podcast is 3 years old now, and we've been doing this for 5 or 6 years. But this thing that we call the game, where
Yes.
we go through a schedule. I'm not saying I want to do this because this is the point I'm going to make. I don't think I can play the game with this schedule. The game, as I was going to explain, is you just go through a team's schedule and you say whether it's a win or loss. You see what you end
And
up
it's
with.
got to be gut
And I don't know why it's
reaction.
called the game because I guess maybe the gut reaction part makes it a game. But
All right,
I
let's play
can't
right
do
now.
it with the schedule. I can't do it.
Well, guess what's happening? We're going to do it.
All right, fine.
Let's start. New Hampshire on a
Okay.
Thursday night.
Win.
UCF is 1-0. How much did they win by? What was the score?
52.
Okay.
They won by 52.
UCF is, I believe, paying New Hampshire $325,000.
59-7.
Okay. Dylan Risk throwing a couple touchdowns in the second half. All right. Sam
Yes.
Houston.
Win.
Family weekend. Really? Sam
Win.
Houston is not an FCS team. Keep in
I
mind,
don't care.
that's it. Okay.
I know that.
2-0.
Yes.
All right, they're 2-0. At TCU. Gotta go. Come on.
I'm going loss.
Okay, 2-1 lost to TCU. That's too bad. Bye week. Nothing happens. Colorado. Big 12 home opener.
Win, I guess. That doesn't feel right.
There's
doesn't
3-1,
right.
and Dion said something really bad in the post-game press conference that has been turned into a graphic by ESPN. Okay, 3-1. At Florida. Gotta go. Come on.
Loss.
All right, 3-2. The fans are rioting in the streets. The bounce house has been lit aflame. Okay, Cincinnati for military appreciation.
Win.
Good bounce back game. 4-2. People are reminding themselves that it's really about the Big 12 slate and not Florida. All right. At Iowa State.
Win.
5-2. BYU for homecoming.
Win.
6-2. They're probably like ranked or close to ranked now. There are celebrations and parades daily in Orlando.
They're ranked or close to ranked, and this is a game day game against Arizona.
Arizona game day game against Arizona. What are you putting?
I would say loss. It's hard to say that because it's the space game though. Like I'm predicting their first ever space loss.
6-3. Gus Malzahn's car has been egged in the parking lot. Okay, at Arizona State.
Win.
7-3. Maybe things will be okay. At West Virginia. I know what you're thinking because I'm thinking too. Loss. 7-4. Okay, Utah, Black Friday.
Loss.
7-5.
We could do this again right now, and I get to 10-2. 10-2 or something like that.
This is what I'm saying. You're right. We could literally just run. I could do this with you tomorrow, and we would come up with 10-2. It's just there's.
We're also
so
doing this on January
games.
30th, so like
the rosters aren't even finalized. UCF's going
Yeah.
to come out of spring ball and realize they need a receiver. I think they know that now, but they'll have to go get a receiver. They'll realize, whoops, the O-line recruits we brought in suck. There'll be something. Like we just don't know. None of the rosters are finalized, but that's what's scary. Is they could go 10-2. They could also go 7-5, and the difference between 10-2 and 7-5 could be a total of like 3 plays not working. It could be Kobe Hudson drops a touchdown. Like that's how razor thin this league is. So it's every season is going to be stressful and scary. And
they went 6-6 this year. They shouldn't have blown the Baylor game. They missed an extra point against Texas Tech to tie the game late.
Yep.
I know they shouldn't. I'm not gonna say they should have won the Oklahoma game, but they missed a 2-point conversion against Oklahoma to potentially send that game to overtime because they ran a wide receiver pass. And Darren Hinshaw said, Xavier Townsend's really got to get rid of that ball. Yeah, ask the wide receiver to get rid of the ball. Should have known that.
I wonder who was calling the plays for that game, since now we don't know.
It was it? Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, so someone, we'll get into it next week. Never mind.
Okay.
I just want,
I keep trying to
say about
we
it.
decided ahead of time because I said originally we were going to do half schedule podcast, half breaking down all the staff changes because a lot of those have happened since we last did a podcast. I said to Bailey, I just have way too many things to say on all that to do that in half of a pod recording in the middle of the night, so we'll have to push into next week. And then I said that to you, and now I have 4 different times tried to push us into that conversation while we're talking about the schedule. So that's on me, and I apologize.
Yeah. We'll save it for next week. But is there anything else about the schedule that you want to say before we get into the very little football news that we have?
Yes, I think that there are some lovely uniforms that will be worn on the schedule just from the way the games break. I think it'll be very nice. So
Yeah, cool.
I'm not giving you mine. We put up a Twitter thing because Bailey wanted me to. So I'll do once I get the schedule. My favorite thing is to then come up with what uniforms I would have them wear for each game, and then I'll do that probably 30 or 40 times over the course of the offseason. But that's not for sharing. That's just
Give
for
me
me.
one. Can we have one? Just a little teaser.
Which game do you want?
Um, BYU.
BYU, I did blackout with the night mode jersey, but I said use the Chrome Gold Scripts Knights decal to mix it up from the last couple years.
Ooh, okay.
So
Nice.
the
I like
reason I
it.
don't like doing this also is because and I've said this before on the podcast, one of my biggest pet peeves on Twitter is that uniforms are completely opinion and there is no one uniform combo that makes sense for a game. There are plenty of combos that can make sense for each game, and nothing infuriates me more than when people invent their own combos and then get mad when UCF does not wear the combos they invented on their own and are like, why didn't you wear white pants? Because that's what I had. So I don't like putting mine out there because I think it's dumb. But anyway, there you go. I've given you one.
Cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I
You're welcome,
appreciate it.
listeners.
Let's get into the football news, and this is not one of the staff hires we're talking about next week, so I can shoehorn it in here. UCF hired Morris Henry as Associate Director of Athletic Performance.
I actually have a
I
lot
don't know
to
what
say
that
about that
means.
next week.
Oh, do you really?
No, I don't. No, I didn't even see
Oh,
that
I
to be
was,
honest until
oh,
right
okay,
now.
yeah.
I
It was one of the many
think that's
best
like
tweets
an
of like,
assistant strength coach, basically, right? Is that what that
welcome
is?
to athletic performance. Maybe? I don't know.
I
I
think
have
so.
no idea. UCF spring practices have been set. I have the dates here on the outline. I'm not going to read them all out because no one can go to them anyway. It's not like they're open. So yeah, a lot of spring practices in March and April. The spring game though is set for April 12th. I have to look. I haven't had a chance because I'm not home. Haven't had the chance to look at my calendar to see if I can make it to that, but I would really like to.
So I missed last year's spring game because I was on a cruise, which you'll probably remember
Yes,
if you've listened to this podcast back then.
because you were complaining that you're going on a cruise.
I announced on Twitter
Yeah.
today that I will be at the spring game. I have a friend who wants to go on a cruise that weekend now.
Well, you have to say no.
We'll see. I kind of
You
want to go.
told you told the podcast listeners and your followers that you would be there.
I don't know if it's gonna happen. This is a flaky friend, so we'll see. Maybe it won't. God, I hope they don't listen. Maybe it'll work
Who is
out.
it?
I'm not saying who it is. I'm not outing my friends' names. It's no one you're friends with.
Well, okay, fine. Tell me after the podcast.
I
I'm
will.
curious. I didn't have this on the outline, but the last piece of football news is being here in Mobile for the Senior Bowl. Saw Javon Baker today. Didn't get to talk. I got to talk to him, but didn't get to like actually interview him
Wait, I
because.
didn't know this. You did talk to him?
So here's the thing. Honestly, the media access after practices is so insanely just
Here come the
limited.
excuses.
No, dead serious. Here's the hopefully what's going to happen the rest of the week. So they confine us to like I wouldn't even say a quarter of the field, like a really small part of the field. And if a player doesn't cross over into where I am or like where we are, there's nothing I can really do about it. So Javon, we only get 10 minutes after each practice. So Javon, after the first practice today, was nowhere to be found. First of all, I thought he was already in the locker room or something like that. So I'm like looking around, I'm scanning, can't find Javon, and then eventually, like after the horn already blares, finally I see Javon coming up. He crosses over to where I can actually talk to him. Two guys jump in front of me, start talking to him. So we like the media, whatever media relations people are like walk and talk. Like you guys got to get off the field. So like we're walking. The three of us are walking with Javon Baker. These guys won't shut up and stop asking him about stupid things. I don't know what they even asked them. They're probably good questions. And so finally,
They're probably
like
like,
Javon's
Javon, have you
walking.
ever wanted to kill a DB?
Javon's going toward the locker room, and I'm like, that's the opposite direction of where I'm supposed to be going. So I'm like, I'm not about to get yelled at again. So I told Javon, I was like, hey, I was like, I'm gonna try to find you tomorrow. I went to UCF, we'll talk. And he's like, oh, bet, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. So like the hope is whether it's after practice tomorrow, which is also gonna be crazy in 10 minutes, there's also like an actual media day sort of thing where the way it was last year was all the players were in a ballroom and they were kind of just sitting at tables and you could just talk to whoever you wanted to.
That seems more
So
ideal.
that seems like where hopefully I can get to talk to Jalen Baker. So,
What are you going to ask
but
him?
I will tell you right now, there's things that people want me to ask him that I cannot ask him on the record.
You
I will
can,
say
though.
that.
You
Not on the
can.
record.
Not on the record, but you can ask them.
Yeah, there are things that I'm going to ask him probably off the record that I would like to know, but
Can
there's
you
things
ask
that
him one question for me
is it on the record, off the record? What is it?
on the record?
What is it? Favorite uniform?
I'll tell you the off the record podcast or questions off the podcast, but the on the record
Yeah,
question I would like you to ask him is I want to know his favorite uniform combination that he wore while at UCF, and he's not allowed to pick the Houston combo.
the Houston combo.
Yeah.
Why would you pick that one?
He came up with the helmet for that one, so he's going to pick it. So he's
Oh,
not allowed to
okay.
pick that one. So tell me he can't pick that game, and I want to hear it.
Okay.
All right.
I think I forget. I think he was wearing like the black helmet with like the chrome gold stacked UCF. It looked really good. If I'm not mistaken. I think that's what he was
I
wearing
think you're
today
right because
for
I saw
the
a video of him with a catch
yeah.
that, yeah,
Made a really good catch. Like he had a good practice.
he bobbled it. I don't
And
know. I think
I don't
people are getting a
care.
little crazy with it.
No, I don't care. People like it's I think he's gonna have a huge week and people are already kind of like it was funny because he had his measurables come out on Monday and I went to the quote tweets to see like draft people were saying and a lot of people were like one of my guys to watch this week like one his
Yep.
stock's gonna go up and I'm like nice. And then the quote that came out on Tuesday night of him saying when he lines up he wants to kill a
I
DB.
was about to say
That's he's
extraordinary
already
quote.
he's already gone up boards because of that. I'm telling you right now. So yeah,
Javon and
hopefully
Gabe
get to
Davis
talk to him.
both thriving in the league at the same time is going to create like such a false impression of what UCF has turned out at wide receiver the last couple of years, and I think that's really exciting for narrative pushing and also for recruiting.
This is off topic, but I'm curious where Gabe goes.
Yeah, because he's definitely leaving, right? I don't really,
I would think
I don't
so.
follow the NFL as close as you do,
His
obviously, since you
contract is
cover it.
up, so he's a free agent, and I don't know. I mean, there's stuff that like you gets probably blown up, and like I know he was yelling. Him and fans were yelling back and forth at each other after
Right.
they lost. He wasn't even playing in that game, so I'm not even sure like, people were yelling at him. But I don't know. I think like there were things this year where a lot of people were upset with him because I don't know. He got like I don't watch enough Bills games closely enough to know people were like blaming him for a lot of Josh Allen's interceptions,
Yeah.
and so I would have to watch to like actually know if that's like legit. But yeah, I don't know. It just feels like
It felt like
probably
he was becoming a bit of a scapegoat where it was just they're playing the offense isn't performing well. It's
yeah.
because of
It
stupid
it
Gabe
feels
Davis
like he'll probably move on to go somewhere else.
to the
So we'll
Chicago
see.
Bears.
It's Christian's team because
It
why
is.
Christian?
We don't have to say why. That's my team though, and it has been for years now. So
All right. Oh, I won't pry. Let's get to game of the week. Game of the week is UCF men's basketball. They're 12-7, 3-4 in the Big 12. They have a game before this game of the week, but we're making it this one. They play at home on Saturday against number 23 Oklahoma, who I haven't checked the final of their score tonight, but I think they were up pretty big on K-State. So I'm gonna say they're 16-5, 4-4 in the Big 12. That game is Saturday at 4 o'clock at Addition Financial Arena. You might be asking why are we doing game of the week? As this game instead of the game against the higher ranked team, which is Wednesday night against Baylor, number 18 Baylor. It's because Christian and I are going to be at the game on Saturday,
that's right.
and this is our podcast, and we can do whatever we want. So, game of the week is the game against the lower ranked team. The fact that it's just two, like, I was talking at dinner because my boss said this before. My boss went to Kansas State. We're talking about Big 12 basketball at dinner tonight, and it's just like every night is a top 25 game for like a given team.
Yeah.
Like the game that was on at the bar, I think was Texas Tech,
I
and I
have the
forget who they
slate
were
from
playing
the Big 12 slate from tonight.
from
They threw
tonight.
three games on tonight. It was number 8 Kansas versus Oklahoma State, number 15 Texas Tech versus number 25 TCU, and number
That one,
23 Oklahoma
yeah,
versus Kansas. I've said it before, and I know it's not like a thing I invented. It's a common saying, but the Big 12 for men's basketball is what the SEC thinks it is for football. It's
yeah.
just insane. It's nothing but
Two
insane.
home games this week for UCF, and they're both against top 25 teams. Like
Four
that's
straight
just.
games coming against top 25 teams, which they could reasonably lose all of those, and then our happy little feelings on the basketball team will be over, and everything will be sad.
But hey, we got is it next week? No, might be the week after. No, it is next week. Softball starts next week, so
Can I say one more
that's
basketball thing?
yeah.
We got 7 games into Big 12 play before they lost 2 in a row.
That's actually crazy.
That's insane. Like just from what we thought this offseason, that's
Yeah,
insane. But yeah, softball is right around the corner, and I'm super freaking excited to see
yeah.
what softball can do in the Big 12. I think that's going to be
So
a ton of fun.
we'll have more than just men's basketball as an option for game of the week because Lord knows women's basketball is not an option for game of the week right now.
They lost quite
Um,
badly to West Virginia tonight, so
just things are not going
might be
well.
time to be talking about a
Uncomfortable
change in
conversations, yeah,
leadership
are happening.
for that program.
Yeah, tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week. Now I know what you're thinking. If you're on Twitter, you're probably thinking tweet of the week is going to be me and SJ2E's, I don't know, discussion.
I still can't believe that happened.
And you'd be wrong because I really don't want to like make more of that. I'd rather just not because he like runs a multi-million-dollar organization that decides whether UCF can field a competitive team or not. So I'm just gonna not go farther into that. And also, he fights with UCF fans all the time on Twitter, so you can just find another one. Instead, I'm going positive for Tweet of the Week this week because we do this sometimes, and I have to give a giant shout out to the UCF content team for both of their schedule reveal videos. There was the awesome office style schedule release video they posted earlier that shouted out Cyclone Larry several times and was just a huge hit on Twitter. And then, as if that was enough, they then dropped the Simpsons version tonight, which I think a lot of people liked even more
I
than the
haven't even seen
original.
that one yet. I saw the
It's
thumbnail for it, but I haven't been able to watch it.
so it has to be AI or something. It's like a fully written song. It's to that Taylor Swift song. It's the one that the name I can't ever remember. It's like it's like her old one that's really famous. That's not gonna help. It's like where Romeo's throwing pebbles and stuff. You know what I'm talking about? That one.
Love Story?
Sure. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I think that's the one. It's to that. It's to that, but it's Homer Simpson singing about UCF schedule. And the lyrics are like really good. And I don't know if they used
I need
AI
to
or
see
what.
this.
And then it's all matched to Simpsons clips that correlate to each game. It was even better than the skit one from earlier. So I just huge shout out to UCF football for releasing the two best schedule release videos today, and both of them are doing numbers and awesome. I was joking because I said I feel like the first one was for like our generation, and the Simpsons one is for the older generation UCF fans. It's to kind of like keep both happy, but just huge shout out to the content team. Those videos were I was it made today so fun. They were just so fantastic.
Yeah. No, they are just the best around, and it's awesome.
I think it's
I
good to
just
mix in a positive tweet of the week every now and then too, just to
yeah.
like keep people on their toes. You know,
Stay too negative all the time. Like you're just gonna start to feel it, you know?
people say that I'm an optimist. So.
I sure do. Let's get out of here before Christian says anything more optimistic than that. We want to thank everyone for listening and for bearing with us. And if you came back after last week's podcast, then you just a real one. But keep leaving us your 5-star reviews because we have earned them, believe it or not. We've earned them. Please submit your questions. We love
What does
getting
that
get some of
mean?
your questions.
What does
What
that
we
mean?
earned 5-star reviews. We're great. We're great at
Okay.
this. Optimism.
You
Um,
you phrase that as if there's been some conversation about how we haven't earned our 5-star reviews, like, and you're fighting against that notion.
maybe there has maybe there's a narrative out there that I'm fighting. I don't know.
My favorite
Um,
review we've ever gotten was I think 2 years ago now, and someone left 1 star, and the entire review was listen to Sons of UCF instead. Still my
yeah,
favorite.
thanks Trace. No, it wasn't Trace.
It was okay. So the name on it was Trace Boom, and I immediately
Yeah.
messaged Trace Trolko from Sons of UCF and said, "I see through you're a burner," and he was
What
like,
was the
"Haha."
one?
I remember because he was like, "Haha," and then I think an hour later he messaged and was like, "You know that wasn't really me, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, I know that you did not actually leave the review."
We got one review one time that like I think confused who we were because the one thing they said about you was or the one thing they said about me made it like it was way more applicable to you. I think they were talking about you, but they were like I don't know. I don't know if
I
that's just
remember
I
it
don't
was
think that's
something
my ego, but it was like
they said it was something like Christian's takes are great, but Bailey is just so all over the place. I get sick of it, and we were
yeah,
both
and they like
like,
said
"That
like I
doesn't
was said
match
like Bailey is
up."
whiny, like Bailey's like takes her all over the place and is whiny, and I'm like I
Yeah,
don't feel like I whine that
sounds
much. I don't
more
feel like
like
you whine that
me.
much either, but
No, I
I don't know.
whine. I whine. I'll own that. I get a
Okay.
bit whiny on the podcast. But anyway,
Oh yeah. All right. We'll be back next week with with episode 191, where we will have a lot of things to say about the
oh yeah.
coaching staff changes and the direction UCF's going in 2024. But until then, you can find us on Twitter at Bailey J Adams 22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye everybody.